Episode 1 The Sad Wizard. It was midnight on July 27th when the first event took place at Arcadia Video Games. Not all the residents of Redgrave knew exactly what was unleashed in their seedy town on that evening, but the ones who did know, and the ones who survived, would never forget that fateful summer of '75. The chain of events to follow would forever change everything. Just hours prior to the event, there was an overall calmness in Redgrave. Only flickers of lightning and faint rumbles of thunder kept Danny Zorn company as he rode around the rural town. Finished with his deliveries, Danny steered his new blue Pathfinder up to the curbside in front of Herbie's Fantastic Pizza More. As he stepped onto the walkway, he frantically rubbed his hands together and cupped them over his mouth to catch the warmth of his exhale. Danny grinned with his windburned cheeks as he felt the heat on his fingers. Danny checked his watch. It was 10:31 p.m. He switched off his bicycle headlight and thought about how dark and cold it was for a July evening. But mostly, he thought about how the gloom and darkness made him feel depressed. Danny had grown accustomed to the companionship of the moon and stars. They made his lonely deliveries more enjoyable on those clear summer nights. The overcast night had robbed Danny of his simple comforts, and his thoughts began to drift to the dark corners of his mind. There, he began to think of his cousin Ziggy Zamoda, as well as his mother, Maria Cavallo Zorn. No matter how fast he pedaled, he could not outrun his grief. A tear ran down Danny's cheek and onto the lapel of his wool-lined jacket. Danny rubbed his eyes and pulled his red ball cap visor down over his blonde hair. He was all alone in the dark, and there was no escaping his haunted memories. Occasional lightning flashed across the night sky. It was the lightning that made Danny think of Ziggy, who used to say, "Magic is all around us, like a whisper in the wind, or an inscription in a book. Secret or obvious, you can see its signature traces in the branches of trees, the cracks in the walls, and the lightning in the sky." Of course, magic made Danny think of his mother, Maria, who used to sing to him a song entitled Magic by the rock band Pilot. Maria would sing the song Magic to tease Danny, as mothers do, when she could actually get him to do the house chores. Danny's eyes swelled again as he began to hum the magic song while he chained his Pathfinder to the public bike rack. After he gave the lock and chain a final yank, Danny removed the bungee cords from the bicycle's rear carrier rack, and then let out a sigh of relief as he thought to himself, "I made it. Just got to drop off the money, get home, and I can crash on my bed and get to sleep. Especially if it storms tonight, like Mr. Murphy mentioned earlier. I wouldn't have believed him. It never rains here in the summer. But my uncle once told me, Murphy's a human barometer." Danny was deep in his mind when a sharp foul odor of urine and garbage invaded his nostrils. Danny flinched and lost his footing, but managed to catch himself from a near fall off the curb. Then he heard the sound of rummaging and a graven voice that said,
"Flashes, earthquakes, lightning, bad omens, bad omens."
Danny looked up and was startled to see a haggard man in his 60s at the trash can beside the bike rack. Danny's heart sank as he saw the unmistakable grimy navy jacket and knew right away who that man was. The homeless man's name was Brock Willard. Danny was unsure what he was going on about, but he couldn't stand to see another human being digging through the garbage for food. "Sir, if you're hungry," Danny said, "I can see if my uncle has any food he can give you." Brock looked up at Danny and said,
"Thank you."
"You're welcome," Danny replied. He tried to give Brock a warm smile, but his eyes filled with sympathy as he watched him continue to forage through the trash can, just as Danny had seen him do many times before. Danny couldn't help but stare at the horrid artifacts trapped in Brock's peppered beard and wild matted hair. Danny thought about how people called Brock the zombie of Redgrave, because he was known to roam about like a tattered, empty shell of a man.
You're Miss Cavalzone's kid, aren't you?
Yes, Danny said in a somber tone.
Her smile in her eyes, and her kindness. Most people just ignore me. She was always kind to me.
Danny looked deep into Brock's fragile eyes and saw a tear stream down his cheek and then disappear into a crusted labyrinth of dirt and facial hair. Thank you, Danny sighed and lowered his head. I'm sorry, it's late. I should go inside the restaurant and hopefully find you some food before it all goes bad. As Danny rushed away, Brock shouted.
Oh, wait.
Danny paused in alarm and then turned back towards Brock.
There's bad omens tonight. Be careful,
Brock said.
I get premonitions sometimes.
Danny pondered on Brock's words for a moment. Were they ramblings of a madman, or were they words of caution to be reckoned with? Danny soon shrugged off the warning when he entered the restaurant and was greeted by the delightful aroma of tomato sauce and garlic. However, the pleasure of it was immediately lost when his eyes were bombarded by the bright lights inside. Danny squinted as he hung his heavy jacket on the coat rack by the doorway. After his eyes adjusted, he scanned the room. His cousins were nowhere in sight, but he could see his Uncle Herbie, rag in hand, hard at work, as he gave the heavy wood dining tables a good wipe down. As always, Dean Martin was playing on the jukebox. The ambient music blended nicely with the wall-to-wall Italian decor that consisted of an assorted cluster of famous Italian imagery and pictures of the Cavallo family. It was a unique blend of a typical Italian restaurant, but with a game room that ensured the place stayed lively. There was always something new or old to experience at Herbie's, especially the food. That kept people coming back for more. Danny dragged his black and white Converse shoes as he looked over the vacant kitchen. Did Don and Gino go home early? Danny asked, as his legs wobbled with each step. Herbie looked down his prominent nose and past his bifocals as he paused in his routine to look at Danny. He brushed the sweat from his brow with his large hairy forearm.
Yep,
Herbie replied.
they already finished in the kitchen and went home. Boy, you lookin' tired.
Yeah, been pedaling all day and night on that bike you got me. Haven't ridden around like that since grade school. Of course, it didn't help that I had to go all the way to Mr. Murphy's.
Heh, no wonder why your legs are wobbly. You pedaled all the way up to the boonies.
Herbie bellowed out a laugh. Yeah, it was a lot of deliveries and stuff, Danny replied, and he took the fanny pack of money and receipts from his waist and set it down by Herbie. I forgot to write it down, but Buck Wallace wants to lay $100 on Ali for the October match.
I'll talk to him later,
Herbie said, as he looked over the money and the bookings in the fanny pack.
Well, you did good tonight. Got some bad news for you, though. A kid named Freebird beat your high score.
Freebird? What the hell kind of name is that?
It's his handle. His real name's Jesse. He comes around now and again. He's a kid about your age, 16 to 17. Does some side work for me here and there. He's a bit of a hustler. Moved here from the other side of the lake, the reservation. Yeah, Gino bet him money to beat your high score, and he actually did. I couldn't believe it.
Danny stood in silence for a moment, then fished out a pack of licorice from his back pocket. He took out a vine and started to chew on it as he tucked the rest away. Well, Jesse, we'll just see about this, he grumbled. Danny's face was like stone as he staggered over to the wizard pinball machine and stared at the score reel on the back box. His eyes narrowed as he verified the high score was indeed toppled by another. Danny began to chew his licorice with intensity while he white-knuckled the sides of the game machine. He continued to stare at the score of 86,463. It might as well have been laughing at Danny, who vowed to himself, I'll wipe your score off the face of the earth, Jesse, even if it takes me till next morning. Danny's athletic build hovered over the playing field. He brushed back his blond locks from his face, adjusted his cap, and closed his eyes, poised and ready to beat Jesse's high score. He took a stance in his ankle-high Converse, held a deep breath, and pulled the spring plunger back. I got this, Danny thought, as he opened his eyes, smiled, and he...
Hey, why you want to waste your time on that thing?
Herbie boomed from across the room. Danny shuddered and accidentally launched the ball.
What about that nice girl I used to see you go with?
Herbie continued.
That's who you should be spending your time with. She came by, I forgot to tell you. She came by and asked for you. Said she wanted you to call her when you got off work. Why don't you go call her now?
Because I don't want to, Uncle Herbie. Danny snapped at his uncle as his game ball guttered. Herbie huffed and puffed through his dark mustache.
You mind your uncle, kid.
Danny turned around and looked at his uncle. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to snap at you. It's just been a long day.
Well, all I was trying to say is you keep a pretty girl like her written around, and she won't be your girl anymore. You should settle down with her. She's a nice girl. You listen to your uncle.
Ooh, Janice? Nah, she's foxy and all, but she's a hot dog stand. That was just a... you know.
Oh, ain't that a shame? She's such a nice, pretty girl. When you gonna find a nice girl to love and settle down? You're almost 18 now.
I don't really want anything serious now.
Okay, you at least gotta get out there in life. Have some fun. Have some adventure at least. You know better than a lot of kids just how precious life is. We're here today, gone tomorrow. It could be the end of the world, and what have you got to show, you know?
Come on, Uncle Herbie, it's not going to be the end of the world.
And how would you know, Junior? All I'm saying is there's better ways to sort yourself out than wasting away on these games. You don't want to let these things control you.
It's just a game, Uncle.
Just a game? Look at what it's doing to you now. A moment ago, you were too tired and wanted to go to bed. Now, you're carried away on that thing. These machines are designed for that very thing, to ensnare people, and they're getting smarter. They got them transistors in them now, and they can get in your head. I'll bet one day they'll make these machines so smart they start thinking for themselves. Machines could become so advanced they could take over the world or something. I'll bet it starts with the new arcade machines, like the one next door. You know, those vertical video game things. I've seen kids look like zombies in front of them, playing and feeding them quarters. Who knows what's inside them, staring back at you from the other side of the screen. I'll never have one of them scary things in my restaurant. I regret them pinball machines even.
Come on, Uncle, that's just crazy talk. That's impossible. I mean, I've seen some unexplainable things, but what you're saying, that's impossible. And I don't see how computers could get that advanced.
Who knows? Technology is advancing so much, or maybe it's evil spirits or something that get inside them things, or possess people or something. A ghost in the machine. You never know. I've seen bad things happen, even here, in this town.
Oh, that's ridiculous. That fear stuff is just brought on by your Catholic superstitions.
Hey, don't blaspheme, kid.
Okay, sorry. Jeez.
Look at me, Danny. I'm not telling you what to do. I just don't trust them. That's all I'm saying. You mark my words. Danny, stay away from that place next door and those vertical monsters, or one day you're gonna open up Pandora's box.
Well, I don't really care for the video game machines either, okay? All I care about right now is beating that guy's high score. Maybe you don't understand, but it's something I just gotta do, okay?
You know, I understand you better than you think I do. Maybe I should have had a talk with you about this sooner. But this really isn't about pinballs and high scores, you know? You're just spinning your wheels. Your mom and cousin dying and all that nonsense with your dad got you all tied up in knots right now. I know it's been hard on you. Losing your mama? Hell, it's hard on me too. I love my sister dearly. I just wanted to see you do well, and that's why I bought you that Pathfinder. You're pretty much a man now, so my advice is, if you want to challenge yourself, get out in the world and test your limits in life a little. Don't just stick yourself behind a pinball machine or your bedroom with only your grief as your company.
Look, I hear you, but I'm dealing with all that grief stuff with my head shrinker, okay? She agrees that pinball is actually therapeutic for me. But aren't you supposed to be telling me things like, I should listen to my father and be a good son?
Not after the way your father treated your mother, my sister, certainly not after the way he's treated you. It's like your dad had magical thinking, like you were gonna be a football star and get a scholarship to college or something. But clearly, football was not what you wanted. I'm glad you stood up to him. I'm sorry he took your El Camino, but you had to stick to your guns.
Yeah, but now I have no car, and I'm stuck living under my dad's roof. For now.
Ha! Well, you have a bike now. But seriously, Junior, if you ever want to move out of your father's place, you can always stay with us. You know, your Uncle Herbie will take care of you. I could even lend you some money so you could go out in the world and get some adventure.
That's nice and all for you to offer, but I kind of feel guilty about collecting this money for your loans and bets while I make the food deliveries sometimes. Don't you ever worry about the sheriff?
What's the matter, Junior? It's not like I'm asking you to break anyone's legs. You're just delivering and picking up. And don't worry about the sheriff. He and the mayor have their mitts in everything around here. They know. I'm just the middleman, you could say. Nothing compared to some of the other stuff the mayor and sheriff got going on.
I'm not sure that makes me feel any better, Uncle, said Danny.
Danny, you're going to find that life is not so black and white. Believe me. Even the preacher isn't all that righteous in this town. Not many are. The ones that are, I'm not even sure why they'd want to live here in Redgrave. This town was built on shady enterprises. Ever since the mines were established a century or so ago, especially after they dried up. Heck, kid, this place where you're standing, in this very spot, where your grandfather ran a semi-renowned speakeasy.
Herbie pointed over to the end of the game room wall with a photo of his late father framed on it.
That door over there in the back corner, behind your pinball machines, led to an illegal casino as well. Matter of fact, until recently, pinball machines were illegal too. Pinball. Prohibition. They'll probably be making marijuana legal soon. Lies are about corporations and politicians getting money and power. That's why tea parties and speakeasies happen. Believe me, it's all a game, and don't think that the governments, especially ours, aren't involved in some shady and illegal stuff themselves. Drugs, illegal arms deals, you name it. Plus, above all that, they love dipping their hands in our pockets. You'll see when you do your taxes. That's why they don't like the mafia. The taxes weren't paid. It's all a racket, a game, not like the pinball. Only if you're not careful, you'll be the ball battered around the table. Believe me, in order to survive, you gotta know what's going on around you and learn how to leverage it to your benefit. And that's how you stay ahead of the game. In the meantime, get out in the world and live some adventures. Then you'll learn what I mean. And for God's sake, find yourself a nice girl and fall in love, and then settle down and have a family.
Herbie paused for a moment and rubbed his eyes behind his glasses. You okay, Uncle?
My eyes have been bothering me. I gotta go see my eye doc, and he's gonna do some tests, dilate my eyes and all. Makes my eyes all sensitive to light. I have to wear them horrible sunglasses over my eyes. It's exhausting. Anyhow, all I'm saying is sort yourself out, because if you don't, this town got a way of doing it for you. That's just a fact of life, kid. I just want to see you do good. Your uncle just wants the best for you. But you need motivation.
That's just it. I'm tired of people trying to motivate me by saying I need motivation. It's really aggravating. Plus, I'm not even a senior in high school yet, and I just wish I could enjoy my summer curled up in my bed and just be me, without anyone climbing on my back about it.
Stubborn and headstrong, just like your mama,
Herbie said, and gave Danny a wink and patted him on his cheek.
Well, you're a good kid. Stick to your guns. That's the way to do it.
I miss her, Uncle Herbie. Danny's eyes swelled, and he wrapped his arms around his uncle's burly frame. Danny's tears dampened his uncle's barreled chest, as Herbie paused for a moment to give Danny a rigid hug and a stiff pat on the back.
I miss it too, kid.
Herbie gave an awkward sigh. It was clear Herbie held back his grief, as his eyes reddened, and a stray tear ran down his cheek. Herbie was fast to smear it off with the back of his hand as he sniffed his nose and cleared his throat. Danny knew from experience that his uncle had reached his emotional threshold, and he released his uncle.
Okay, well, Junior,
Herbie started to say. As he walked away, he wiped his hand over his face and then turned around to look at Danny.
I need you to come in early tomorrow. I have a bunch of deliveries for you to make first thing, okay?
Danny nodded and wiped his face with his hands. Now, can I get back to my game? Danny smirked. It's therapy. I'm just sorting myself out, okay, Uncle?
Sure, kid. Whatever you say. Just make sure you turn off them breakers like I showed you. And then lock the front door when you leave. Just be in early tomorrow. I need them deliveries done or there'll be hell to pay.
Danny nodded his head and then watched his uncle march to the front door and exit. The rattle of the keys and the creak of the door lock echoed in the still of the restaurant. Danny turned back to the pinball machine, rolled a quarter in, and steadied himself. Danny smiled while he heard the mechanical pop release of the ball as it was loaded into the chamber. Once again, he pulled the spring pin back and let it propel forward. With a furrowed brow, Danny watched in satisfaction as his release impacted the chrome ball. It rocketed forward and then rolled around the back curve of the playfield. The music, thumps, bells, and dings signaled the starting of the game. Danny was exhilarated. Whatever feelings of exhaustion Danny had felt earlier was replaced by sheer determination to beat the high score Jesse left behind, even if it took Danny all night. Danny's belt buckle jingled against the lockdown bar of the machine as he skillfully nudged the game table just enough to position his ball to his advantage and not trip the tilt sensor. The tilt sensor prevented players from cheating or abusing pinball machines. If you moved or bumped the game too hard, you could lose the game. Tilts, bumpers, flippers, legs, playing field, the shiny ball, and the backboard. Danny loved everything about pinball. To Danny, pinball was the sum of analog elegance and low-tech. High-tech was more his father, Vincent Zorn's domain, specifically high-tech and digital. Maybe that's why Danny really never looked twice at things like video games. Vincent Zorn sold cutting-edge, high-tech computers, video, and sound equipment to corporations around the world. Danny's animosity towards his father created something of a psychological aversion to the high-tech digital world. Danny was so consumed with the happenings of the thumpers and the targets that he did not notice that he was about to beat Jesse's high score. When Danny finally did glance up at the scoreboard, he became elated with anticipation. I'm going to beat Jesse's score. Then a loud boom rattled the room. The ground jolted back and forth and then shook. A few pitchers fell off the walls and glass shattered onto the ground, while pans panged and rattled in the kitchen. Danny staggered and grabbed a hold of the side of the pinball rail to brace himself. Bzzz! It was the dreaded buzz of the tilt indicator that Danny heard. Game over for Danny. The machine blackened, soundless and lifeless, except for the rolling ball that followed the gravity of the table's decline. Danny tried in vain to stop the game ball from guttering down the drain and into the outhole. He knew the flippers would not respond, yet he still pounded on the side buttons in his frustration. All he could do was watch hopelessly as the metal sphere rolled and rolled down the drain and into oblivion, along with his compelling hope to crush Jesse's high score. He looked up, and his score was 86,271. His face flushed red as he realized he only needed a couple hundred more points, and he would have beat that high score. "Damn it!" he shouted, and pounded his hand on the corner of the machine. Danny sighed, took a couple of breaths, and looked at his watch. It was 11:16 p.m. "Damned earthquake," Danny grumbled. "I wasted all that time for nothing." The exasperation and fatigue began to set in. Danny knew he was defeated, and he was better off with his original intention to just go home and go to bed. Danny locked the front door of the restaurant as he balanced the large pizza in his other hand, and his thoughts went back to the frustration of his defeat. "Unbelievable!" Danny grumbled again. "Earthquakes just suck."
Is all that pizza for me?
A feeble voice from behind said. Danny flinched as he spun around. The box of pizza fell to the floor. Danny saw it was Brock. "Geez, don't do that," Danny said as his heart raced. "Man, you want to give me a heart attack?" Danny laughed as he caught his breath.
Didn't mean to startle you. I've just been waiting here like you asked me to,"
Brock responded. "Oh, your food," Danny said. "I'm so sorry, forgive me. I completely forgot. Here." Danny looked down, and most of the pizza was spilled out of the box and onto the pavement. "Ah, jeez," Danny said in disappointment.
"It's okay, sir,"
Brock said in a soft voice as he eyed the pizza on the ground and picked up 2 dirt-seasoned slices of pepperoni and cheese from the sidewalk. "Don't! There's some clean ones still in the box." Unfazed, Brock just smiled through his gnarly beard as he casually nodded and placed one slice in his pocket and brushed off the visible grit from the other pizza. Danny shrugged his shoulders and pushed the dirty pizza back into the box with the clean. "Did you want the rest of this?" Danny asked. As he waited for Brock to answer, Danny set the box of pizza on top of his bicycle rear carrier and readied himself to go home. Meanwhile, there was a roaring sound that rumbled in the distance. Danny cringed as he watched Brock open his mouth wide and make ready to stuff the dirty pizza in his mouth. The roar grew. Both Brock and Danny looked up with alarm to the booming of a loud engine as a large red truck zoomed by them. Brock flinched at the sound of tires screeching the truck to a halt. The wheels spun again as they shrilled and smoked. The vehicle turned around, then raced towards Danny and Brock with its headlights fixed upon them. Danny shielded his eyes with his arms, and Brock covered his eyes with a slice of pizza. Then the wheels screeched again as the high-raised truck slid within a couple yards of the two. The truck stopped haphazardly with its front wheels up on the curb. Then the engine cut off. Blake hopped down from the truck's driver's side. He was a short-statured boy with a buzz cut, wearing a red and yellow Letterman jacket. Aaron, the other boy, lanky, with greased black hair and freckles, joined him, while Karen, the trophy girl, stayed in the passenger seat with a displeased look on her face.
"Wizard, I was hoping I'd find you."
Blake gave Danny a friendly tackle and a shove. "Hey, Blake," Danny said in a deadpan tone. He casually patted Blake on his yellow leather sleeve.
"That ain't a way to greet your buddy?"
Blake said as he gave Danny a big hug. Danny stood reluctant and stiff as Blake bear-hugged him.
"So you hardly ever go out with us anymore,"
said Blake. "We hung out the other day at the restaurant," replied Danny.
"Yeah, but you don't go out to places with us. All you do is play pinball or stay at home."
"We just saw Jaws last week."
"Only 'cause I twisted your arm and begged you to come with us."
"You only did it because my uncle gave you guys free drinks and pizza."
"Well, this time he promised us free calzone."
Blake laughed.
"Come on, let's go see Jaws and then see what's for kicks after."
"I don't..."
"We'll be here tomorrow. I'll have Karen bring her lady friend for you. You'll like her."
"Aw, come on! I don't want a blind date," Danny grumbled.
"But what are you guys talking about?"
Aaron said, as he strolled over and took out a cigarette pack from his dark preppy pants pocket. He stood in front of the group, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and blew a smoke ring. Aaron had a large smirk of satisfaction as he looked at Blake and Danny. There was no reaction from either of them. Aaron turned around to look up at Karen, who was still seated in the truck while gazing into her compact mirror as she puckered her lips. Aaron's smug look was defeated. He lit his Zippo and swayed his finger back and forth over the flame and frowned. Brock's eyes widened as Aaron toyed with the fire. Aaron glared at Brock.
Why you eyeing me, old man? Want a light or something?
Aaron held out his Zippo towards Brock.
Jeez, the zombie reeks,
Aaron said as he moved closer to Brock. Brock flinched and dropped his slice of pizza as he recoiled from Aaron. Brock put up his hand in a defensive manner towards Aaron's lighter as the flame came nearer.
Ha ha! Look at this bum, scared of a lighter.
As Aaron grinned, his braces glistened behind the flicker of his lighter. The roots of his red hair were exposed underneath the black facade of hair dye. Enough already, Danny protested. Can't you see? He's traumatized or something.
Look it,
Aaron pointed at Brock.
He already has burn marks on his skin. He should be used to flames. Let's burn away his nasty stench,
Aaron said, as he continued to push his lighter at Brock.
Stop, stop,
Brock cried, as he buried his face in his hands and trembled on the ground.
Come on, you're a loser. You don't even want to live. You just won't admit it,
Aaron taunted Brock. Aaron! Cried Danny.
What?
Aaron turned to Danny.
Everyone tries to help him, and he won't even help himself. Blake's dad offered to give him a place to stay and a job.
Aaron turned toward Brock.
You don't even help anyone or do anything. You're worthless. Why don't you just end it now? Or better yet, let me end it for you.
I said that's enough, Danny yelled, and pushed Aaron away. Just leave him alone.
Oh, what, Danielle?
Aaron said, and shoved Danny.
This guy's a loser, and so are you.
Danny clenched his fist and glared at Aaron. I think you're the only loser here, man. Aaron assumed a defensive karate stance.
Let's see how big you talk after I sweep the floor with you, Danny.
Guys, cool it,
said Blake, and stood between Aaron and Danny. Honestly, Karen shouted out the truck window, I can't believe I ditched Celine just to watch you guys behave like idiots, she said, and then proceeded to paint her nails.
Put a lid on it, Karen,
Blake hollered up at her. Brrr! The sound of a short siren blast broke the tension. The group looked up to see Sheriff Rayner as he pulled up in his patrol car. What's going on here? The sheriff demanded as he poked his head outside of his window.
Nothing, sir.
Blake quivered. Look to me like you're harassing this man, the sheriff pointed at Brock. He's a war veteran and a friend of mine. You have no idea what he's been through. So, show some respect. Sheriff Rayner exited his car and squinted his eyes as he scanned around the scene. You okay?
Yes, sir,
Brock replied, as he looked up at the sheriff with a solemn nod. Well, I suppose there's no harm done here, then, the sheriff said. Then he turned to Blake. But I just got a call from the janitor at Redgrave High. He tells me that some kids in a red truck were doing donuts on the school football field, spinning out and tearing up the lawn. I sincerely hope that wasn't you guys.
No, we were at Herbie's all night. Ask Danny here,
Blake said with a sheepish grin.
Yeah, that's right, we were at Herbie's,
affirmed Aaron. The sheriff shook his head, then turned to look up at Karen as she blew on her fingernails. That true, Miss Karen? Karen gave a deep sigh as she chomped on her bubble gum and continued with her nails. Yes, Sheriff, she said as she blew a bubble, and it gave a loud crack. The sheriff pulled a blade of grass from Blake's truck wheel, examined it, tossed it, and glared at Blake. Best not let me catch you park up on the curb again, boy. With a look of content, the sheriff smacked his lips, nodded, and pulled up his belt.
Yes, sir.
Blake said as his cheeks flushed red in spite of his tan skin.
Blake, you better tend to your little missy. She's looking mighty bored.
The sheriff chuckled to himself. Then his face soured again.
I best not hear any more ruckus involving you tonight, boy. Now get going.
The sheriff got in his car and drove off. Blake exhaled with a look of relief.
Man, that was a close call. He cleared his throat and then looked up at the group. Hey, let's go the V-Lots.
Hey, it's gonna storm tonight, sir. Be careful,
Brock said in a low voice.
Storm, eh? Well, let's just go back to my place and crack open a few,
Said Blake.
You want to join us, Wiz?
Thanks, replied Danny. But I'm just going to go straight home to bed.
Suit yourself. Mind giving us some of your slices then?
Blake grinned. I guess, Danny chuckled. Help yourself, it's special.
Right on. Can we take the whole box?
Suit yourself, I lost my appetite. Danny looked down at Brock. How about you, sir? Do you want any more?
No, thank you, I'm fine.
Brock said, and then took the slice on the floor and put it in his large coat pocket. The others had a look of disgust on their faces, but no one said a word. Danny just smirked and looked away.
What kind is it?
Asked Blake. Just leftover pepperoni and cheese with, some secret seasoning. Danny chuckled and handed Blake the box.
What's so funny?
Aaron asked.
Oh, nothing, Danny replied. Let me know how you guys enjoy the pizza.
Yeah, thanks. See you tomorrow?
Blake asked. Danny nodded as Blake grinned and took off in his truck with the others. Danny turned to Brock. Let me help you up, sir. Danny assisted Brock to his feet. I'm really sorry about Aaron.
It's okay, son. Wasn't your fault. This ain't the first time this man's got himself harassed by some rich white kids.
Honestly, he's a jerk to everyone, Danny said as he looked down at his watch. Geez, it's almost midnight. I gotta get going. Sorry again about Aaron. I don't like him much myself. Danny hopped on his bike and then turned to look at Brock. You take care of yourself. As Danny pedaled off, he watched the thick droplets of water begin to splash down. They were periodic, a few at a time, but then the precipitation began to increase in numbers and intensity. Danny felt the chill of the wind pick up. Then he heard the thunder growl out, like a promise of the storm to come. That's when Danny thought about Brock's warning. The old man's look of concern and sadness was seared in Danny's eyes. What could it mean? He wondered, as he pedaled on with haste and caution. This concludes episode 1. Please turn over the record to listen to episode 2.